Hi and welcome to today's episode in which I see if it's possible to make a vegan version of that Indian classic Murg Makhani, or butter chicken as it's otherwise known. For the last few months, every time I've been on YouTube Shorts, something about butter chicken pops up. So I've thought, I wonder if I can play around and make a vegan version that's going to be pretty tasty as well. The Hindi name for butter chicken is Murg Makhani. Murg is chicken, Makhani means butter. One of the TV chefs I kind of grew up with in the UK is Madhur Jaffrey. So she's a very celebrated, well-respected Indian chef, cook. Not sure how she likes to be called. This book was published in 1982, so it's an old one. I don't tend to cook much Indian food at home. It's nice to get an Indian takeaway and have something that I don't normally prepare myself at home. But I thought it'd be nice to try. Initially, I looked online to find some recipes and get a feel for the ingredients to see whether or not it would work as a vegan dish. Then remembered I've got this book. Her recipe in the ingredients list, it says tandoori style chicken from the previous page. So I went to the previous page and she's got a method for making a pretty decent tandoor chicken at home. A tandoor is a clay oven that gets really, really hot. If you put meat in there, for example, a chicken leg, it sears the outside of the meat and then all the moisture is retained inside. So it's fairly juicy. I have all of the ingredients for the marinade in, so I thought, well, I'll do that because it'll add some extra flavors as well, because this has got things like yogurt in, so that's going to help it give a bit of tang. So it'll be a 2-stage recipe. I'll make up the marinade, put the tofu pieces in, and then that needs to marinate for, ideally a few hours, but I've got a friend coming at 7:30. Feel free to skip the marinade part of it if you just want something super, super quick. Not a problem at all. The recipe she's got is for 1.25 kilos of chicken. I've got like 730 grams of tofu, so I'm going to cut the ingredients back a bit. I'll build marinade in my little tub, and then there's no messing around with multiple things to wash up. If you were wondering what this stack here is, it's the tofu. I've just been giving it a press. Took the blocks, squeezed them out over the sink, sliced them down into thick planks, paper towel on both sides, and then heavy weight on top. That's been there about half an hour, something like that. That's fine. Feel free to skip the stage if you want, just pat the outside of each piece before you chop it down. I'm gonna blend up the marinade ingredients in a glass jug here. I've gone for quite a big one just so I've got room to maneuver things around. This is the yogurt that I'm gonna use. It's a plain yogurt, but there's also no added sugars. If it doesn't say no sugars, it is gonna be sweetened, and you definitely don't want that. I'm gonna do half the pot, I think, which is about 250 mils, just over a cup. The original calls for half a medium-sized onion. I've got these shallots that I've had in the cupboard for a while that need using, so I'm gonna chuck those in. So I'm just gonna cut these down into smaller pieces just to make a bit less work on the blender, and then add them to the jug. Her recipe says 1 clove of garlic. There's no way I'm putting 1 clove in. I'm gonna do 3 little ones because I like garlic. Put the pieces in. I'm gonna peel some fresh ginger. I'm gonna use the edge of a spoon so it takes off just the skin and leaves lots of the flesh. Chop that down a bit and then put that in the jug. It says to add half a hot green chilli. These ones aren't hot, so I think I might just put the whole thing in. I'm just gonna scrape the seeds out and then I'll chop that down a bit. Gonna add the juice of half a lemon. Trying to do it carefully so I don't get it all over my lens. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm gonna do some black pepper, just because I like pepper. Probably 1/4 teaspoon. Gonna use garam masala. This is an Indian spice blend. I can't remember what the translation is. I'll stick it on screen perhaps. I'll do 1/4 teaspoon of garam masala. To get some colours going on, I'm gonna add in some saffron. Optional, or you could use food colouring if you want. I'm just using a stick blender for this one. Feel free to use a jug blender if you want. Just gonna check to make sure nothing's lodged up in there, which it's not. I'm gonna strain the marinade through a sieve. I think the straining stage probably isn't super necessary. I guess we'll see what's left at the bottom. And then just rub that through. You're straining out the little kind of stringy bits of ginger and that kind of thing. So I had a big XL block, which is 450, and then I've had another 280. 3 horizontal cuts, 4 vertical. So it's nice kind of bite-sized pieces. Chuck those straight into the marinade. Gently stir them in. Oh, do you know what, I'm just going to go in my hands. I haven't got time for messing. I'm just being a little bit delicate because tofu will crumble apart. I'll put the lid on that and I'll try and remember to mix it through a couple of times. While I'm waiting for the tofu to marinade, I might as well whiz up the sauce and then it's done, ready to be poured in a pan. In my pan here, I'm just toasting off some cumin seeds and then I'm going to grind them down. So I just need to toast them a bit. First ingredient is going to be some tomato puree. You could probably use passata or grab a can of tomatoes and blend them down. In case you're not aware of this trick, tubes like this that have got a seal over the end, the cap has a little poker in it. You just invert onto there, punch it in, twist it around, and that opens the tube. So I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of that. And then I need to make this up to 110. Give this a whisk. I've used boiling water. It doesn't say to do that, but I've just decided to do that. Then I'm going to do fresh ginger. I'm doing it on the microplane to get it really smooth. So that leaves ginger on the back. Get that in. I found this Elmley plant-based cream in the supermarket yesterday. I used the Flora one a few weeks ago when I did the pavlovas, so I guess more of the companies are jumping on the wagon. Half a teaspoon of the garam masala. This is my addition. I'm going to add in some ground mace. It's the membrane that's on the outside of a nutmeg. It's got a very mild nutmeg flavour, but it's brighter. I'll do 1/8 of a teaspoon. It's quite powerful, so you don't need much. I'm going to start with a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and then I can adjust that as it's cooking if I need to. About 1/4 teaspoon of sugar. This is light brown soft sugar. This is another addition of mine. I'm going to do a 1/4 teaspoon of MSG just to boost up the umami. The original says a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne, which it would be an 1/8, but I think I'm going to do a 1/4 because the chilies are very, very mild. I'm going to chuck in some black pepper just because it's there. Got another chili, so I'm just going to de-seed it and then mince it down. So I've stacked the 2 on top, and then I'll just run my knife over it several times. Got some fresh coriander. I'm going to do stalks and all. So that's very finely minced. Get that in the jug. I need 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. I'm just going to roll the lemon a bit just to help the cells break down so I can get maximum juice out. I'm going to do the juice away from the camera because I keep getting stuff on my lens. I just need to crush down the toasted cumin. And I need 1/2 teaspoon of that. Whatever's left over, I'll just put back in the jar. Add that in. Double check I've got everything. I'm suddenly looking at it like this is very liquid. Perhaps as it heats, it'll thicken up. If not, I'll have to reach for a thickener of some sort. I've got some oat flour. It's just oats that I put in the coffee grinder, so I can always thicken it with a bit of that. I think the yogurt will also help thicken it. And because it's soy yogurt and there's lemon in the marinade and in the sauce, adding an acid to soy milk is how you make tofu essentially. I can see that there's little to no excess liquid now, whereas before there was a big pool of it at the bottom. So I think that's going to help thicken everything up as well. I'll let that continue doing its thing for another hour or so maybe, and then all we need to do is melt some butter and then chuck everything in. I'm just looking at the recipe. From what I can gather, it's assuming you've got hot cooked chicken pieces, because you then add the chicken pieces into the sauce, stir it through a little bit, and then serve it. I think I'll fry off the tofu in a pan with some oil, take it out of the pan onto a plate, and then melt the butter, add the sauce in, and then add the tofu pieces back in right at the end. Tofu's been marinating for about an hour and a half. I've started frying off a white onion. I decided I want some onion in there as well. So that's 1 large white onion. I just fried it off in a bit of sunflower oil. I'm going to put that on a plate and then put the tofu in. Heat up a bit more oil. That's the tofu after the marinade. Just want to get a bit of colour on there really. I've got this on 6, mine goes up to 9, so it's like a medium-high heat. I've just decided I'm going to pop in a little bit of turmeric into the sauce. So I'm going to do like 1/2 teaspoon. Okay, I'm going to put another batch in. I'm suddenly doubting if there's going to be enough sauce after worrying it was too much. Yeah, I'm going to double the amount of sauce just while I'm waiting. Okay, so I'm going to take this out of the pan. I've got 100 grams of vegan butter. So that's all melted. I'm going to pour the sauce in and whisk at the same time. What I'm hoping is that as this starts cooking, that it's going to thicken up, because that's very loose, isn't it? It's just a liquid. Back down to 7 now that it's bubbling, because I'm worrying that the plant-based cream isn't behaving like dairy cream would. But even a dairy cream, you know, the original recipe says single cream. Well, I've got the oat flour, so worst comes to worst, we will thicken it up manually. But the smells coming out the pan are wonderful. Well, I'm going to go in with the oat flour. So again, that's just oats that I put in the coffee grinder. So I've done like half a teaspoon to a teaspoon. I need to do the bulk of the thickening work before the tofu goes back in, because once that amount of stuff goes back into the pan, I'm not going to be able to mix things through very well. I'm going to do one more. Might as well finish the pot. You could also do a cornstarch slurry if you want to thicken it that way. I just like using the oats because they've got a bit more body to them. So I'm going to turn that down, put the onions back in, very carefully put the tofu back in, and then combine those gently. So I'll give that a couple of minutes, and once everything's come back to temperature, I will plate up and we'll do some eating. My vegan twist on butter chicken is looking incredible and smelling divine. So yeah, that looks great. It's not so visible here, but in the pan, the butter is split. I can't remember if it was in her recipe, but I've definitely seen it in a recipe that happens. So it might just be that that's unavoidable, but it's not going to make any difference to the flavour. I cooked off some rice in the Instant Pot as well. I like rice with a curry because it's a nice kind of bland background. Bottoms up. Oh, that's delicious. It's kind of tangy, spicy, but spicy, like spiced rather than spicy hot kind of thing. There's a mild heat. When I doubled the sauce quantity, I put in more cayenne and some chili powder as well. I like things quite hot, but it's not blow your head off. Stunning. That's better than any Indian takeout I've had since going vegan. And I'm generally not just saying that. The texture of the tofu, because I use that extra firm one, it's got a nice bit of bite in there. I don't know if I've ever had this dish, and if I didn't know there was butter in here, I wouldn't say, oh, it's got tons of butter in, because I thought it was going to be a really, more like a korma kind of flavour. You know, very kind of mild, very creamy and a bit more, you know, but this is rich and it's lovely tangy flavours. So it doesn't feel sickly. My friend's coming around in a minute, so she's gonna have that for her dinner. And then I'm hosting the Dietary Losers dinner club tomorrow night, so they're gonna have some too, which is why I did quite as much as I did. I'll definitely be making that again. And I think it is worth doing the yogurt marinade, because I really think that's adding a lot of tangy flavour to it. The onion that's in the marinade that we blended down, I think that's also adding a bit of body, a bit of extra flavour. If you don't like tofu for whatever reason, grab yourself a bag of vegan chicken pieces. If you're in the UK, Dopsu, do some lamb pieces. That would work really well. If it's okay to thaw those pieces, I can't remember what the bag says now, it's been a while since I've had them in, but if it's okay to thaw them, I would defrost them in the marinade. So break apart the pieces as best you can, put them in the marinade, and then just leave them in there for 4 to 6 hours, something like that, and then go from the frying stage. I'm very happy that I can now say to my patrons that the butter chicken idea was a success, because I was mentioning it to them in my last post. If you'd like to join up, get access to some behind the scenes content, also some chat features, I'll leave the link to my Patreon down in the description for you. It's a lovely way of helping out creators financially, but also, you know, creating that kind of community vibe, which all of us need in 2024, don't we? Because it feels like we're all separate little islands, all freaking out together. If you want lots more delicious evidence that going vegan doesn't have to mean turning your back on your favourite foods, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Tap the bell icon if you want to get an alert as soon as I publish a new one. While you're waiting for the next one, have a look at this.